Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 472.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because here's the thing. When it comes to building your cash flow, you and I, we all have to start somewhere. I've often said where you start isn't necessarily where you stay. But in order to rise above, you must be willing to overcome many obstacles. And in fact, the life experience you are currently having probably feels like an obstacle, and you probably feel like, oh my gosh, I just cannot do real estate because all of these things are in the way. And then you still have to figure out which way you're going to go when it comes down to the whole real estate game. Well, I have with me today someone who has managed to do exactly that. Now, I want to say something that's very important. You got to understand where she started was at age 16, single mom. Think about that for a second. What were you doing at 16? Probably not that. But more importantly than any of those things is the simple fact that now, today, she has a portfolio of over $60 million. That's a lot of real estate. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of lessons. That's a lot of change and growth that has happened. And we get the privilege of finding out how it's done. I have with me today none other than Edna Keep, author, teacher, real estate investing expert. And one of the things that I want you to pay attention to is not only just how it's done, but why it's done. And most importantly, how you can do it too. So let's get ready to listen, to learn, and to love Edna Keep. Edna, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay. How are you?
So far, so good. I'm excited because you remind, like I was saying before we started recording, I mean, you remind me of my mom.
Yeah.
Because, my mom had me at 16. I was like, oh, cool. I felt like a connection just on that alone. So I appreciate all the single moms, and I definitely appreciate what you've gone out there to go do.
Oh, thanks so much, Jay. Yeah, it's not an easy job. You're still a child yourself, and then to have to grow up so fast and get, supporting the family and that sort of thing. Yeah, I admire your mom too for just having to go through that, and how wonderful you turned out in the meantime, because sometimes our biggest challenges, like you mentioned earlier, our biggest obstacles actually end up being our biggest favors in the long run.
Indeed. Now, before we get too far down, what I want to do is I got to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can occasionally envision myself running around town, possibly wearing a cape and some tights, but using our products and services to save our customers in various forms and fashions. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. For example, if you think about Spider-Man, there was a time where he was just going to school, trying to get some good grades, maybe take an occasional photo, have some pizza money, and then one day something happens to him and he realizes, oh my goodness, I have these special powers and I get to choose to use them for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before your book, Multiple Ways to Wealth, before the portfolio, maybe even before being a mother, before all the students and the people that you coach today, before all the things that people know you for, what we want to know is, who is Edna Keep?
Well, Jay, when you talk about superpowers and special powers, it's funny, but a thing that comes back to me is a teacher that taught me in high school was hanging out with my brothers one day at a football game in our city. And they were bragging about how well I was doing and all this. And in his class, I had barely passed. I believe he had to give me a 50 to pass me.
Wow.
And, I said to him, did you ever think that I would be this successful someday? And he said, you know what, Edna? He said, you were always very social. And he said, I knew that if you could channel that, you could be very successful. And obviously you have. And, until that time, I didn't even realize how being social can be a special power.
Well, what's interesting when you said that, I was like, I can't think. We've done hundreds of interviews. No one has said being social might be my special power. So I'm right now really, really intrigued because we all know naturally I'm an introvert and social is so not my thing, but I'm interested to hear how that has turned into your superpower. I must know more.
Well, you know what? I'm naturally curious about people. I love being around people. I crave to be around people. I'm probably the opposite of an introvert. I get my energy from being around people. Whenever I have a challenge, my tendency is to pick up the phone and phone some of my key people and just brainstorm with them, because that's how I think best, is on my feet. And so being social is about that. I actually won an award one time for when I was taking the Dale Carnegie course for impromptu speaking. So that you don't really, or I wouldn't think that was a power. I just thought, oh, that's so natural to me. It's so easy. Why wouldn't everybody have that? I didn't realize it was a challenge for people to, what's your name? Where do you work? What's your family like? And they would do this stacking thing in Dale Carnegie. And to me, that was just a natural flow of conversation. And to this day, it is. I love knowing about people. I like seeing where they are. I'm thinking maybe I can help them, or maybe they can help me, because I believe in learning, growing, sharing all the time. And so, yeah, that's where I think being social really comes in and is helpful, because it is easy for me to talk to people.
So, okay, then I have a very interesting question. In the elementary schools, K through 12, etc., we're often trained to not be very social.
Oh, they tried to train that out of me, believe me.
Yeah. Okay. So are we talking, like spending a lot of time in the principal's office?
You know what? Not really. I wasn't that rebellious. I actually loved school, so I was a good student. But I didn't like to be pigeonholed. I had a brother that was very successful at everything he did. He had really good marks. He was a really good athlete. And I used to always get, oh my gosh, Edna, if you were just a little bit like your brother, you'd be so much easier.
Oh, and, no, they did not.
Oh, they did all the time. And you know what? The biggest obstacle was I admired him so much myself. So I would love to be like him, but I just wasn't. We were two different people. And we can appreciate that about each other now. But trying to live up to that when you're young, and having one of the most important people in your life almost being a competition for you, somebody you can never be, was difficult at times,
I can only imagine. I was sitting here. I mean, I have 4 children, and one of my middle daughters, I'm wondering if that's how she feels, because the daughter just above her in age is, well, I haven't seen anything she can't do, so I don't even understand, what it must feel like to be. I never thought about it, I guess. But hearing you talk about it, I think we should check into that. Now, with that all being said, that is the background. What I want to ask you is that there's a number of entrepreneurs out there who are still in that, we'll call it hoping phase. I mean, obviously today you weren't handed anything that you've earned, but many of them feel like maybe their opportunity's not there. It's past me. I can't do it. What would you say to someone who's having those types of thoughts?
You know what? It doesn't matter how old you are. Tomorrow's a new day. We never got
say
into
that. Hold on. You got to say that again, because see, there's I know there's two types of people right now. There's the person who's we'll say in their 20s or early 20s or maybe even in their teens listening, going, I'm too young. But I also know that there's a number of individuals who are more seasoned in life who are saying, my time is past. So you need to say that again.
No matter how old or young you are, tomorrow's a new day, and you can always start there.
Yeah, always. Keywords. Yeah. Now, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just you said the right thing, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, yes.
and you know what? No worries at all, Jay. I think it's really important too. You know, I'm 59 now, and I was 48 when we started in real estate investing. And we started out just dabbling, thinking, we would get a rental house or two. We had no big dreams of being big real estate entrepreneurs. We just didn't. It wasn't there. I was a successful financial advisor, making about $250,000 a year, had a good life. My husband and I had two daughters, young daughters at that time. And he had a good career. I had a good career. It wasn't what we were looking for, just wanted to supplement the income a little bit. But, when I understood how real estate worked, I couldn't even be a financial advisor anymore. I sold people on life insurance and mutual funds, and I just couldn't even do it anymore. So I ended up selling my practice 2 years in and went full-time into real estate.
I am stunned silent because I did the same thing. That's how I got into real estate.
Oh my gosh!
I felt like I was offering these products that I knew that I suddenly now knew that there was a better solution with it, and it needed to be real estate based. And I'm just like, I can't keep doing this because I feel like this real estate thing would be a better service to people. I've never heard anyone else say that.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
Good connection.
Because, I had my licenses and all that other stuff too. But, okay, so this brings up a great question. Everything was fine. A lot of people seek something because, I lost my job, and, oh my gosh, I got this life-changing event happened, and so now they're looking for a new answer. I'm not hearing that with you. So I think, and I also think it takes a little bit more faith, dare I say a lot of bit more faith, to leave a good situation for something you perceive to be better, but you don't know yet. Where did that courage come from?
Well, I'd done that a few times in my life already. Right out of high school, I got what was considered a good job at a doctor's office. I didn't go to university, had no money, had to look after my daughter, so I had to get a job. And it was a 9-to-5 job, Monday to Friday, and my friends were like waitresses and cleaners, and they just thought I had it made. My family thought I had it made. What a good job, working at a doctor's office. The money wasn't all that great, but, Monday to Friday, that's just perfect. But I was bored. I was so bored that I remember being at work and literally fighting back tears because I was thinking, oh my God, this is my life. And then I realized I didn't need to stay there. So I started studying, and I started taking actually correspondence courses because I couldn't afford much else. I was living in low-income housing. My daughter was going to subsidized daycare where I was paying all of $30 a month. And so I signed up for there were ladies in my office who were secretaries and accounting clerks, and they were making more money than me, like $100 a month or something. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I could do that, I would have the cat by the tail, And so I took these correspondence courses.
Hold on. I just want to make sure you said the number correctly. You said $100 more a month?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
First one was 100 and the second one was 200. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if I could make $200 more a month, that would just make all the difference in my life. And so, like I said, I took correspondence courses because I had to. I couldn't go to school full time. And I got my secretarial, then I got my bookkeeping, and then I actually moved to the city. So I left my good job that people thought I was crazy to leave, and I couldn't get a job in the city before I moved there. A lot of people said, "Oh no, you got to actually move before people will look at you and think you're serious." So I moved, and I went down to the EI office, unemployment insurance office, the first day, because I knew I didn't only had enough money to last me a couple weeks, and applied for EI. I had 2 interviews the next day, and I got offered both those jobs. Never had to never collected unemployment insurance in my life, and got a job. And then after a couple of years there, I decided again I wanted more. So I took some administration classes, again, all by correspondence, because that's all I could afford, all I had time to do. And then I got a job as an office administrator. And I was there for 8 years. It was a big move up for me. Now I was making about $43,000 a year, where I was used to making under 20. And I loved it. My boss was great with me. He gave me all kinds of freedom. While I was there, I actually started part-time as a financial advisor through a network marketing company. And he allowed me to set up a group plan at the office. So I had an instant 100 clients. And you'll know what that means. Yes.
What?
Yes.
That never happens.
I know. It was such a break for me. And my second year doing it part-time, I made $26,000, which was about half of what I made full-time in my job. And so my manager at the time at the financial services company says to me, Edna, you wouldn't need to make much more to live the same lifestyle. It's different being self-employed. And it was, again, a big move, because I had, by this time I was only working 4 days a week. My boss allowed me to take every Friday off so that I could pursue the financial advice stuff. And I was still making the same money. So 4 days a week, 3 days off on the weekend, everybody again. "Oh, Edna, you got it made. Why would you ever consider leaving there? They love you." And they did. But there was just something in me that knew I wanted more. And I'd read a story in a magazine about this lady who was making $300,000 a year as a financial advisor. And so I thought, you know what? If I could make $100,000 a year, I would just have the cat by the tail, And so I took the plunge and I went full time. And the first year I made $67,000. The second year I made $187,000. And I knew then that I was finally on a path to financial freedom, because that was my goal. I always wanted to be financial free. I hated people telling me what to do. And although I was a good employee, a decent employee, my bosses always loved me. I just felt like I could do so much more if I was just my own boss. And true, as a financial advisor, Jay, you don't have a boss. You have maybe a mentor or somebody who will help you out, but you call your own hours, you call your own income. And again, I stayed there for 8 years because I was making good money. A lot of it was passive income because we got trailer fees.
Right.
So I was making a good at least $10,000-$12,000 a month just from trailer fees. So before I left, I was down to working. I went to 3 days a week after my girls were born. They're 16 and 14 now. And then the last 2 years when I was doing the real estate, I went down to 1 day a week. And my assistant handled a good portion of it. But another reason besides that I couldn't sell anything, because she was basically doing all my selling for me at that point.
Oh, that's right.
Was I couldn't sell it. She decided she was going to leave, and I went, "Oh my gosh, if I got to do that work, I won't." So I sold my practice to a fellow that was right in our office. I set it up so that I would get recurring income from him for 4 years, because by that time, within 18 months of starting our real estate classes, we had 50 doors. And that was our 10-year goal.
Right.
I can't even remember, 10-year goal. So when we did it in 18 months, and we're making about $5,000 a month in passive income from that, I thought, you know what, if I can get another 5 from him roughly, there's my base, and I can always earn more than that. So I took another plunge and went into that full time. So I do have some history of doing that, taking a chance. And I would say and you know what, it's taking a chance on yourself more so than taking a chance on the industry. Because no matter what I did, there was no choice. I couldn't fail because I had a kid to look after.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's exactly, I was getting ready to say, would you credit the fact that having been a mother at 16 to being willing, or just seeing that life in sense of, I don't have a choice. I have to keep moving forward. I have to try to make this work. I don't have the luxury of fear.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? To this day, Jay, I feel the same way. I feel exactly the same
Right.
way. I don't have that luxury.
Right.
And some people will take crazy, crazy chances. I was just reading an article before we got on the call about a Richard Branson entrepreneur and how he was finding somebody to run his business. And he took his 12 prodigies up to the Niagara Falls to see who would jump in a barrel with him and go over the Niagara Falls. And only one person jumped up and said they would. And he thought he would because that was a necessary risk you'd have to take, that Branson would like that. And just before they were going over, Branson jumps up and says, no, that's sure death, guy. He says, I wouldn't work with you because you take too high risks. So with me, that's how I felt. I could never take really, really, really high risks that depended on anyone else but me. But I could take enough risk and rely on myself that I knew. Like my manager said, Edna, if you can make $26,000 a year part-time, can you imagine what you can make full-time? And although I was nervous about it, I did it. And then when I left the financial planning, I thought, you know what, if we can do 50 doors in 18 months part-time, what the heck can I do full-time? And that's exactly what happened. I got to know the right people. I've had a coach in my corner since 1999. I've never been without a coach. I hired my first one when I was a financial advisor. And the reason I did it, because we were at a convention one time and all these big producers, somebody at the front of the room said, how many of you guys have a coach? And the big producers who I got to meet all put up their hands. And I went, okay, that's what I need to do. And I am a big believer in getting help. Don't try to do everything all by yourself, because there's so many learning curves that you can go through where somebody else has gone through it before you. So it fast tracks you by dealing with a coach, I think.
No argument there whatsoever. I was taught a long time ago there's this 4-stage process. Watch me do with me, do alone, then teach another. And you clearly have gone through this 4-stage process, and now you're transitioning, or you're beginning to share your information. And I think that's just the natural evolution of all of us, wanting to contribute. And
Yes.
I think you've stunned a few people, because if we do the math, you're saying in 11 years you've been able to build a very sizable portfolio. You're breaking their brain, for lack of a better way of putting it, because it's like that. I know what it's like to set this intention and this goal of, because I again, when we started, I thought it was going to take. I said to myself, I'll give myself 10 years. To get to $10,000 a month. I'm chuckling today, but I didn't know any better. That's all I knew, but we need that goal. So what I want to talk to you about is, because your goal was 200 more a month, and I'm just like, how has talk to us about the Edna then versus the Edna today? What do you think she's learned that has contributed to her mindset changing so much?
When I was younger, I had a fixed mindset, basically saying, well, this is just me. When we were in school and I was comparing to my brother, I was like, well, this is just me, and I'm not that smart, and I'm not good at sports. I'm not that good. I'm not that nice. Like, my brother was super nice. I wasn't that nice. Like, you're always beating yourself up for what you're not. Well, once I learned that everything out there was learnable. Absolutely everything. That made all the difference for me. I used to think that, I was born this way and I'll never have a really good job and I'll always be kind of dumb. And,
Whoa. But you don't have a really good job.
No, you're right. I don't. I don't. And you know what? For a long time, I beat myself up about not having the kind of jobs some of my friends did, government jobs and stuff. Now I realize, that just wasn't my path. Wasn't my path at all. I love being self-employed. And you know what? One of the things I teach my children, we put money aside for them to go to school. But I've said to them, if you decide never to go to school, you will not break my heart at all. I never went to school, and I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I shouldn't say I never went to school. I was always learning, but I didn't take a formal education. I said, what I'd like to see you guys do with your education money is follow Tony Robbins around for a year.
Right.
And just work for him for free. That, to me, that would be the most powerful education you could ever get.
Absolutely. And I share your sentiments. I've told my kids that if you're going to school, I'm a little bit stronger. It's like, if you're going to go to college, you're going to pay for it. I'm
okay.
not.
Yeah.
Because I think there's value in making them go to something that I now believe to be highly optional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, if you want to go, you can go. But be clear, Dad doesn't think you need to go because of everything that's here. Now, you mentioned something just now that I think is very important. You said there wasn't this necessarily formal education, if you will, and I like to draw a line, a very clear distinction between we have a great schooling system, is what I call it, but we have a very poor education system. But yet,
Yes.
You took the opportunity to educate yourself, and I would love for you to, because there's this other entrepreneur out there that I know is listening who feels like I went to school, I got my good grades, I got my job. Where was my promise is not here. I don't want to go and learn something else. What would you say to them? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over 6 figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
Well, you know what? I have a hard time relating to that because I love learning. You know what? I always did love learning as long as it was something that was my choice. I didn't like having stuff stuffed down my throat, like learning about history and science. That wasn't my forte. And I struggled with having to learn that crap.
Yeah.
But if it's something I'm interested in, I love it. I study every single day something, and I love it. I love learning. I love growing as a person, and I love sharing what I learn too. That's where my social part comes in, right? So I love reading. I love taking classes. I love working with coaches, and I love sharing that because I know a lot of people, they think that education is going back to the school they went to years ago.
Right.
There's so many opportunities online. You can sign up for a course, a webinar, a masterclass, a video series. There's so many different ways of learning, and if you tailor it to what you're interested in, that person just has to spend some time figuring out themselves. One of the things I work with my students is, I want people to be happy, wealthy, and wise. not just wealthy, not just wise, but happy at the same time. And if you're not doing stuff that makes you happy every day, it's got to be a rough life. I would hate that. And, it takes getting to know yourself to realize, first of all, what you're good at. So start by anything. Like one of the questions, what were some of your hobbies when you were a kid? What did you absolutely love to do and you would just get lost for hours? And then how can you make some kind of business out of that?
Yeah, totally. Although we have never met in person, you keep taking words like right out of my head. It's really, it's like, it's just awesome. It's just awesome because it just says that we're all human, even though we have different experiences in so many different ways. So I have to ask the question though, why bother? You've written a book, you've got a fabulous masterclass. Why bother doing coaching and mastermind groups and doing these things? What's in it for you?
Oh, you know what? And I didn't realize this years ago. When I first started in real estate, people would say to me, "How did you get successful so fast? Like that's amazing, 50 doors in 18 months." And I realized that
it's not bad. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
now.
I know. But when I said to people, well, you know what? I used to be a financial advisor. I know how to talk to potential investors. We've done this with very little of our own money. And two things. One is we educated ourselves. And the other is, well, I was a financial advisor. And I thought to myself for a long time, you just can't do that because, I was a financial advisor for 15 years. And then I started thinking, you know what? That's not true. I learned how to be a financial advisor. I can teach these people how to keep their investors, how to get investors, how to find investors so that investors will want to work with them and stay with them and fund many, many, many of their deals. And that's actually how my program started. People were asking me for it. Edna, how could I do what you did? And after a few years of getting asked that, I went, you know what? Yes, I can teach it. I had to figure it out for myself first, but I absolutely can teach it. And I can give people shortcuts where we started with single family homes. Condo was our first purchase. Now I teach people go straight into multifamily. Investors like it better. You don't have to worry about your income covering off the mortgage if your house is vacant. Your building will still cover it. So there's just some steps that you got to take. It's all a system that you have to do.
100%. And I don't know. I like everything that you're saying. I appreciate what you were doing because being able to give other people your superpower has got to feel good.
You know what? And it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. We had bought a business shortly before I got into coaching, and that business was set up pretty successfully. We're going to do well. We bought it more for my husband because he wanted to do it. And I really didn't have to work anymore. And then I started helping people. And it's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And I actually feel like every single thing in my life that I've done up to this day led me to coaching other people. Yeah. Every challenge, every obstacle, every single thing.
Yeah. We're not related, everybody, but we feel the same way.
That's funny, eh?
I don't know what else to say right there because you did it again. So that's amazing. So when it comes down to your real estate world today, what's the strategy that you prefer right now?
We primarily buy multifamily, and we're in a niche of about generally anywhere from 12 to 36 units we'll buy at one time.
Awesome.
Generally older buildings. We do have a few newer buildings, just got some really good deals on them, but generally older buildings, tired landlords who don't keep their rents up, who maybe don't keep their property in tip-top shape. So we buy them.
Did you say maybe don't?
Yeah. Well, and you know what? It doesn't happen all the time. My oldest daughter works for us. She does the property management, and she's actually out in my hometown today, where I was born and raised, 6 hours from us, taking over. We just bought a 41 unit package up there. And she said, Mom, these are the nicest properties we've ever owned. Because she was in them, and yet they're a little bit older too. But we generally buy some stuff that we can renovate and optimize. But this is an optimized package. But because it's in a small town, amazing cash flow right from day one. And when she was telling me how nice the buildings look, which we knew, we'd seen them, but I said, and the seller, and this never happens, he must have put at least $20,000 into his buildings after we made the purchase. He put new sidewalks in. Yes, he put new sidewalks in, and he painted all the buildings to match.
Hold on, whoa. After
we made the deal, before it's finalized, but after we made the deal. Isn't that amazing?
Never. And you didn't ask him to do that. That was just voluntary.
We did not even know he was going to do it. He actually, he actually emailed us pictures one day, and he said, "Hey, by the way, I'm painting this building to match the other two. The other two had been painted," we said, "Wow, that looks amazing." And it wasn't until we were up there just making the transition, picking up leases and stuff, and we drove up to one of the buildings, and my husband says, "Did you put a new sidewalk down since we were here last?" He says, "Yeah, that last one was crumbling. I wanted it to look really nice for you guys." And I said, "What did that cost you?" "Well, about $6,000.
Does he have any more buildings he want to sell?
He has a few. But I tell you, we're staying in touch with him. I know it's like, we just feel so fortunate. And that deal came to us. It came to us through a networking group that we belonged to. Yeah. We were introduced to by another fellow that knew I was from that area and said, "Hey, you got to talk to Edna. I think she might be interested in your properties." And
you are a wealth of information, and there's a lot that can be learned, and I think there's a lot that can be just caught more than taught by listening to you and hanging around and just knowing what you're up to. In fact, I'm going to take a stab and say that there's a number of individuals right now who are listening who want to find out how they can get more of Edna. So what's going to be the best way for them to track you down?
Well, my website's ednakeep.com, very easy, but I have a free resource I'd like to offer your audience.
Okay.
And I like people to start here because if they're at all interested in doing what I do, my story's all in there, how we started, how they can get started. And it's about a 55-minute masterclass. And they can find that at ednakeep.com/90 days to 5K. And I'm actually in the process of doing a name change on that. But the reason I came up with 90 days to 5K is I feel that within 90 days, I can teach you what it's going to take for you to make $5,000 a month in passive income. Because that was our goal when we started. If we could make $5,000 a month in passive income, we'd have the cat by the tail. And I've had students from age 19 to 72 who've hit that. They've actually hit it quicker than we have. So that's a free resource I'd like to offer. And then if people want to connect with me through ednakeep.com/cashflow diary, which is the URL of yours, where I can follow up and make sure that I know where my referrals are coming from. And I'd love to set up a strategy call with them with one of my team members and see if it is something that would fit for them.
Excellent. And I definitely appreciate you continuing to share, to influence, to change, to go out there and make lives better. Now, as we wind down, I got a final question for you because I think your answer is going to be unique for sure. So let's pretend for a moment that there's this other person who's listening right now who's on what I like to call the precipice of decision. They've listened to you this entire episode and they're going, man, if Edna can do it, I can do it. Or they're saying, you know what? It is time. I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to take my business to the next level. Or, I'm jumping both feet in. That's what I'm going to do. But like I know, Edna, that when we get to these moments of decision, what often is our companion is a voice. And that voice often reminds us of things like, it says, Who are you? Do you honestly think you're gonna do real estate? I mean, come on. You are all you. What happened last time you tried that thing? It didn't work out then. What on earth do you think you're doing now? And for some people, they're even related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend this time's going to be different for them. They're actually going to follow through. They're going to do what you suggest, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
You know what? Watch that masterclass. If it's for you, take some action on it. You know what? And if you're hearing that lousy little voice, what I'd remind you is argue for your greatness, not your limitations. It's that voice that can stop you every day, but you can change that voice. You can change that voice to, you know what? If this single mom, 16, not that smart, can do that, why the heck can't I do it?
Yeah. Just so you know, I'm going to take that phrase right there. Argue for your greatness. That was good.
I love that one. I have that on my board at home because you know what? To this day, I have to remind myself of that. When I get posed with challenges or opportunities and I think, oh, I can't do that. And then I have to go, you know what? Look at all the things you've done. Of course you can do it. You have to talk to yourself that way. Of course you can do it. It might take you a little while. You'll have to learn. You might have to spend some money on your education and your coaching, but absolutely learnable. Everything's learnable.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely appreciate everything that you stand for, what you guys are out there doing, the team you built, the lifestyle that's around you, and just the sheer fact that, you know, the playing field is level, and that's what I hear when you speak. It's like, look, you have the capability of learning, and now it's time to get started. And I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, as well as your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
You're most welcome, Jay. It was my absolute pleasure. I love speaking to people looking at changing their lives because I was held back for a lot of years thinking I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't good enough. I can't do that. And if I can help one person get past that, then I did my job.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to ednakeep.com, 90 days to 5K. Why? Because 90 days are coming, whether you like it or not. The difference is will 5K be there for you or not? And now you know what you need to do. You don't have to question. You don't have to wonder. You don't have to guess. You just have to follow, implement, and as I like to say, move at the speed of instruction. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.